Greetings gamers, my name is Anto, and over the last couple of months I've been diving deep into the wellspring of Pathfinder 2nd edition and comparing it to D&D 5th edition. So if you're new here, make sure to hit the subscribe button and stay up to date with all the Pathfinder content. But I recently made a video looking at the fighters from both systems, and in the comments of that a lot of people were asking me to do the same for the wizard. So here we are, this is the wizard video. This video is sponsored by my current Kickstarter for the SIDEQUEST annual. We're going to talk more about that later. We're going to do this one a little bit differently. In the fighter one I made characters for both of them. This one we're looking more at the actual rules, and we're going to look at how wizards work in the two systems. So let's get into it. So we're going to start here with the 5th edition wizard, and we're going to scroll down straight into the class features. So hit dice, 1d6 per wizard level. Hit points at first level you get 6 plus your constitution modifier. Hit points at higher levels 1d6 or 4 plus your con mod for every wizard level after first. Pretty standard stuff. No armor proficiency with daggers, darts, slings, quarterstaffs, light crossbows, no tools. They get intelligence and wisdom saving throws, and they can choose 2 skills between arcana, history, insight, investigation, medicine, and religion. Equipment wise, you start with a quarterstaff or dagger, a component pouch or a focus, scholar's pack or an explorer's pack, and a spellbook. The big thing that we want to know with wizards though is spellcasting and how their spellcasting works. It is different between the two systems. So with a wizard in 5th edition you have a spellbook containing your spells, and that shows you your spells available to you. At first level you know 3 cantrips from the wizard spell list, and you learn additional wizard cantrips of your choice at higher levels as shown in the cantrips known column of the wizard table. And then in your spellbook at first level you have a spellbook containing 6 first level spells of your choice. Your spellbook is the repository of your wizard spells that you know, except for your cantrips, which are fixed in your mind. Now the biggest difference between wizards in the two systems comes from how you prepare spells. So in 5th edition, the wizard table shows you how many spell slots you can cast your wizard spells of first level or higher. To cast one of these spells, you must expend a slot of your spells level or higher. You regain all expended spell slots when you finish a long rest. You prepare the list of wizard spells that are available for you to cast. To do so, choose a number of wizard spells from your spellbook equal to your intelligence modifier plus your wizard level. The spells must be at the level that you can cast. For example, if you're a 3rd level wizard, you have 4 first level spells and 2 2nd level spell slots. With an intelligence of 16, your prepared list of spells can include 6 spells of 1st or 2nd level in any combination. And that's the really key point here. Any combination. You just choose 6 spells and then you can choose how to cast them. Then to understand how this all plays out, we need to look at the rules for spell casting, which is in chapter 10 of the player's handbook. So if we jump in here, known and prepared spells. Before a spellcaster can use a spell, they must have a spell firmly fixed in mind or must have access to the spell in a magic item. And then with spell slots, regardless of how many spells the caster knows or prepares, they can only cast a limited number of spells before resting. Now when a character casts a spell, they expend a slot of the spell's level or higher, effectively filling the slot with the spell. You can think of a spell slot as a groove of a certain size, small for first level slot, larger for a spell of a higher level. A first level spell fits into a slot of any size, but a 9th level spell only fits into a 9th level slot. This is where the biggest difference between wizards in the two system really comes in. It's the thing I want to talk about first. So in 5th edition, as a wizard, you have a number of spell slots and a number of prepared spells, and you can fill your spell slots with your prepared spells in any order in which you want. That is not the case in Pathfinder 2nd edition. So in Pathfinder 2nd edition, the way prepared spells work, as we can see from page 298 of the core rulebook, if you're a prepared spellcaster such as a cleric, a druid or a wizard, you must spend time each day preparing spells for that day. At the start of your daily preparations, you select a number of spells of different spell levels determined by your character level and class. Your spells remain prepared until you cast them or you prepare spells again. Each prepared spell is expended after a single casting. So if you want to cast a particular spell more than once per day, you need to prepare that spell multiple times. The exceptions to this rule are spells with a cantrip trait. You can cast them as much as you want. So the big difference here is in 5th edition, you go, right, okay, I have 6 spells and 5 slots, and I can fill these 5 slots with any of these 6 spells. In Pathfinder 2nd edition, you go, right, I have 5 slots and 6 spells, I have to fill each of those slots at the start of the day with the specific spell that I want. This means obviously that if you have a spell that you want to cast multiple times, you have to specifically assign spell slots to that spell to be able to cast them. It's a big departure from 5th edition. It's not what people who have only played 5th edition will be used to, and it's the most important thing to know about the differences between the two classes, because that can make or break a wizard for some people. Some people have gotten very used to the idea of just, here are all my spells, I can cast any slot with them, versus having to make that very specific decision at the start of each day. I don't think either option is necessarily better than the other. The 5th edition option gives you more flexibility as a caster, but the Pathfinder 2nd edition approach means that you do genuinely have to stop and think about your role within the party, what you're doing in that day, and it does mean that you give a little bit more thought to things. Now this also applies to heightening spells. So in 5th edition, you can choose to heighten a spell by casting a lower level spell using a higher level slot, and it will change dynamically. You can do that in Pathfinder 2nd edition, but again, you have to prepare the heightened version of that spell at the start of the day to sit down and go, right, okay, I've got a 3rd level slot, I'm going to specifically put a heightened version of this 1st level spell in it. But there are things that you can do to mitigate some of this element that the Pathfinder 2nd edition wizard isn't as flexible in their spell choice and preparation as a 5th edition wizard. You do get the Arcane Bond, which is an item that you get, and once a day you can use that item to recast a spell that you have already cast, which means that you get to double stack up on a spell without having to put it into 2 of your spell slots. Especially useful as a 1st level wizard for those 1st level spells, because you don't get as many slots. So you can use this to make sure that you have more options to be able to use for those limited number of preparations in those higher level slots. You can also use your Arcane Thesis to learn the ability to change out one of your prepared spells with 10 minutes of time. This is incredibly useful for you to be able to keep things like Identify or more out of combat related spells that you might not want to sacrifice a spell slot for, but when you need them, they can be incredibly handy. If you're running a dungeon or you're out in the world and you have something that you need to learn more information about something, being able to swap out one of your prepared spells for something like an Identify kind of spell to be able to learn more information, or to be able to go, right, okay, we know we're going into this situation, I wish I had prepared a little bit for this, I can now swap out one of my spells and give myself more utility from it. Especially when you pair that with the Arcane Bond. If you've not used your Arcane Bond yet that day, you get 2 castings of that spell for only 1 spell slot. Cantrips work broadly the same for both systems. You can cast them an unlimited amount of times, and when they do damage, a lot of the 5th edition ones scale at certain levels, whereas in Pathfinder 2nd edition they automatically heighten to use a spell slot equal to half your level rounded up. The other thing to note in Pathfinder 2nd edition is that when you cast a spell, your spell casting creates an obvious visual manifestation of the gathering magic. This is slightly different to 5th edition, which is a little looser in terms of what constitutes as being kind of visible and discernible with casting a spell. I'm sure most dungeon masters out there have encountered a situation where the players have gone, well, I have to speak a verbal component to this, but can the component be a whisper and I'm across the room so they'd have no idea what I'm casting? Or I have to have one hand free to do a semantic component. Can it just be small movements under the desk, that kind of thing? Whereas in Pathfinder 2nd edition, they make a hard distinction and say, unless you have a specific feat that conceals or kind of quietens your spell, then everyone is always going to be able to tell when you're spellcasting. This is really useful when it comes to interacting with the rules for things like counter spells, or for understanding when spells are happening, when monsters or enemies are using spells versus other abilities, which isn't always clear in 5th edition. So this video is sponsored by the SIDEQUEST Annual, which is currently on Kickstarter. This is the first 12 issues of my monthly 5e magazine SIDEQUEST bundled together and available in print for the very first time. Over the more than 170 pages in this book, you're going to get access to a wide range of options for players and dungeon masters alike. You're going to get new classes and subclasses, spells, feats, magic items, new options for players. You're going to get new monsters, adventures, and a bunch of other mechanics for dungeon masters, and then there's a whole bunch of world building and advice articles in there as well. The project is already fully funded. We've started unlocking stretch goals, including this awesome special edition cover, and we've got more to go, so head to the link down in the description below to check it out. And for now, back to the video. So let's have a look at our 5th edition wizard table and get a sense of what we get as a wizard. So here you can see the table. At first level, we're going to get our spellcasting ability and the arcane recovery, which allows us to recover some of our expended spell slots on a short rest instead of a long rest. Then we get 3 cantrips known and 2 first level spell slots. Our number of spells known is listed in our spellcasting here. You know 3 cantrips of your choice from the wizard spell list. You learn additional cantrips at higher levels, and at first level you can have a spellbook containing 6 first level spells of your choice. So those 2 slots can be filled by any one of 6 spells. Then at second level we choose the arcane tradition, so that's your school, abjuration, conjuration, all of those different schools, and that gives you a whole bunch of features as you go through. But as anyone who's played a wizard will know, for the most part, as a wizard, your main bread and butter as you're advancing in level is going to be access to new spells. In terms of features, you don't get a huge number of features compared to a lot of other classes. So looking at the table, you can see other than the arcane tradition features, really all you're getting for most of your wizard level is access to new spells. Now, of course, as a 5th edition wizard, you have more flexibility with the way in which you prepare and use those spells than you do in Pathfinder 2nd edition, but overall your actual character is going to have a lot less choice points and a lot less interesting potential for abilities going on because you are limited to that arcane tradition feature list. Whereas if we jump over to Pathfinder 2nd edition here and look at our advancement table for the wizard, you can see it just like with all the other classes. As you level up your wizard, you're going to get access to a whole bunch of different options like skill feats, wizard feats, general feats, different spells, skill increases, and then you also get specific wizard features that you don't have a choice on. So as a 5th edition wizard, you're going to have about 10 choice points outside of spells where you will make yourself different in terms of your class than another wizard. Those come from your arcane tradition and the abilities you get from that. Any ability score improvements you get if you choose feats, that you can add a lot of variety there, as well as the spell mastery and signature spells that you get at higher levels. Compared to that, a wizard in Pathfinder 2nd edition is going to have around 30 points where they get to make a choice for things like wizard feats, skill feats, general feats, as well as their arcane thesis and a bunch of the other wizard specific stuff. This means that as a Pathfinder 2nd edition wizard, every level you are actually getting to have a look and make some kind of choice and choose some options, versus a lot of the time as a 5th edition wizard you might get, yes, one more spell, especially on some of the between levels where you don't get a new spell slot level, you just get a new spell of your highest slot. A lot of the time it's a case of, okay, I've rolled my hit dice and I've chosen my one spell and my level up is done. It took me 2 seconds. I know all of the wizard characters that I have DM'd for in 5th edition have had those moments where some levels just don't feel like they've leveled up because they're such small gains. Whereas in Pathfinder 2nd edition, you get a lot more choice. Obviously, this barely scratches the surface of what wizards are actually able to accomplish. You have a wide variety of spells at your disposal to be able to draw on. Admittedly, in Pathfinder 2nd edition, wizards are more utility than they are outright damage monsters like they can be in 5th edition, but they get access to a lot more interesting spells, mainly through 10th level spells. So in 5th edition, the spell level maxes out at level 9. That's where you're going to get your things like your wish spells in that level. And something I've always found with 9th level spells especially is that it's really hard to compare to some of the really good 9th level spells. Like there are some like Wish. If I've got the option to cast Wish, I'm always taking Wish. So one of the things that I like about Pathfinder 2nd edition is it added that 10th level spell, which means that some of those more powerful 9th level spells in 5th edition get bumped up to 10th level, and it means that you end up with a greater variety of spells. There are spells that you can take that you might not have taken in 5th edition because they're not as good as Wish, but now those are 9th level spells and Wish is a 10th level spell. If we jump over here to the 10th level spells, you can get a sense of some of the things that are there. Wish, our classic one, is there. Time Stop is there, which absolutely it should be. Stopping time is a 10th level feature. Summoning kaiju or transforming into the avatars of your deities, all of those kind of things are in that 10th level bracket, which I think is appropriate and gives the weight to some of those spells that you otherwise don't get. You also just straight up get more high level spells as a wizard in Pathfinder 2nd edition. So in 5th edition, you only ever really have access to one spell slot of 9th level, whereas in Pathfinder 2nd edition, at the highest levels, you're going to get 3 9th level slots and up to 2 10th level slots. So you get to wield much more power at that top end, but you sacrifice arguably a little bit of power on the bottom end. When you combine this with how good martial characters are in Pathfinder 2nd edition, a lot of people do claim that wizards and spellcasting in general has been nerfed in Pathfinder 2nd edition, especially compared to some older editions. And that might be the case, but really all it's doing is bringing all of the characters closer together in terms of their power, and it just cements the wizard more into that kind of powerful utility role rather than I am gonna burn the earth with my raw power. So there we are, a brief introduction to the differences between the wizard in Pathfinder 2nd edition and 5th edition. I really want to know what classes you'd like to see me take on next, so let me know down in the comments below. And if you haven't already, check out my fighter video just over here. But until next time, happy gaming.